California man put of plane in North Korea, detained son says. CNN. An 85-year-old American man on an organized tour of North Korea was put off a plane in Pyongyang just minutes before it was to depart, the man's sons told CNN on Wednesday. The family has had no contact with Merrill Newman of Palo Alto, California, since he was detained on October 26th, his son Jeff Newman said. This is a misunderstanding. My father is a Korean War veteran and wanted to see the country and culture he has been interested in for years, Jeff Newman said. He arranged this with a travel agent that was recommended and said was approved by the North Korean government for travel of foreigners. He had all the proper visas. The U.S. State Department is working to resolve the matter with North Korea's top ally, China. Ambassador Glenn Davis, the U.S. Special Representative for North Korean policy, met with his Chinese counterpart in Beijing for several hours Thursday. We are working very hard to try to move this issue along, Davis said after the session. We certainly think that North Korea should think long and hard about this and understand that for the United States, this is a matter of core concern for us. The relationship between North Korea and Washington has been especially tested in recent years as the United States and other world powers have tried to limit the nation's nuclear ambitions. On Tuesday, the State Department warned Americans not to travel to North Korea. Previously, the agency had warned U.S. citizens of the serious risk of travel to the reclusive country, including arbitrary arrest for what would be innocuous acts elsewhere, but its last travel warning, issued on October 1st, didn't include the stronger language advising against all travel. Newman's arrest appears to be an indication that North Korea seems not to be seeking a better relationship with the United States, Davis said. They are not taking action to address our concerns. Jeff Newman said his family had been working through the State Department since they found out that his father was being held. We've worked through the State Department from the day he was supposed to depart, Newman said later on CNN's AC 360. We've heard nothing. Newman said what he has heard has primarily come from his father's traveling companion, who was on the plane when he was taken off. He identified the traveling companion as Bob Hamdullah, a friend who lives in the same retirement community. North Korea has not publicly acknowledged its detained Newman, but the family believes the elder Newman's military service during the Korea War may be related to his detention, his son said. Park Sung-jae, chairman of the Seoul-based Asia Strategy Institute, says Newman may have been arrested on espionage charges. As a Korean War veteran, Newman might have told his minders he fought against North Korea. They may have reported it, and it resulted in his detention. Song-young previously announced that the safety of Americans cannot be guaranteed on North Korean soil. Meeting with authorities. The day before Newman was to leave North Korea, he and his tour guide met with one or two Korean authorities, his son said. During that meeting, Newman's service record was discussed, he said. I understand my dad was a bit bothered, Newman said, but neither he nor his traveling companion believed there was an issue. The next day, Newman and Harmdia boarded a plane for Beijing. 5 minutes before the plane was to depart, authorities boarded and asked to see Newman's passport, his son said. According to the traveling companion's account, the authorities then asked the elder Newman to leave the plane with them. Jeff Newman said. When the plane landed, Hamdia immediately contacted the U.S. Embassy in Beijing to report Newman had been taken off the plane, the younger Newman said. Trip of a lifetime. The elder Newman was enjoying the trip and called home from North Korea to tell his wife about it, his son said. The family also received postcards sent by Newman during the tour of North Korea, he said. The younger Newman called his father old school, saying he never talked about his service and the Korean War. The trip to North Korea was months in the planning, the younger Newman said. His father and Hamdullah booked the trip through a Chinese tour company that set up the tour, which included the services of 2 tour guides. It was a trip of a lifetime, he said. Other detained Americans. The elder Newman suffers from a heart condition, his son said. Medication was delivered to the North Koreans via Swedish diplomat, but he said he is unsure if the medication made it into his father's hands. We would like to know his status. We would like the Swedish embassy to meet with him to ensure he's getting his medication, Jeff Newman said. At the end of the day, we'd like him to get on a plane and fly back to San Francisco. He's an 85-year-old man who followed all the protocols. He did everything that he was supposed to do. Other detentions. Newman is the second American being held in North Korea. Kenneth Bay, an American citizen, was arrested in November 2012 and sentenced in May to 15 years of hard labor. The North Korean government has said he was found guilty of hostile act and attempt to topple the government. North Korean authorities have arrested 4 U.S. citizens for entering the country illegally since January 2009. The State Department said in its travel advisory Tuesday. 2 other U.S. citizens who entered the country on valid visas were arrested for other reasons, and U.S. officials have received reports of other Americans being arbitrarily detained, according to the State Department. South Koreans have also been detained. In 1999, a South Korean woman named Min Young-mi was detained for 6 days after apparently saying the wrong thing on a tour to North Korea's Kumgang Mountains. I hope the 2 Koreas reunite soon so we can visit each other, Min said. North Korean defectors are living well in the South. A North Korean miner for the tour group reported his remarks to North Korean authorities. She wasn't allowed to return home with her tour group. After written apology for violating North Korean laws, she safely returned to the South. Chinese labor camp inmates tell of true horror of Halloween SOS. CNN. Tree leaves were turning yellow and red in Damascus, Oregon in late October, competing with fall foliage for attention were Halloween decorations, which adorned almost every house in the Sleepy Meadow class suburb of Portland on America's Pacific West Coast. A few pumpkins sat on the steps leading to Jolie Cave's house, while three fake tombstones greeted visitors in the front porch, as they did last year. I feel obligated to use them every year now because I feel they need to have some worth, said Kate, 43, who lives here with her husband and their two young children. I am sad for the people who have to endure torture to make these silly decorations. The decorations come in $29 totally gold toy set that Kate purchased in a local Kmart store in 2011. When she opened the package before Halloween last year, a letter fell out. In broken English mixed with Chinese, the author cried for help. If you occasionally seek by this product, please kindly resend this letter to the World Human Rights Organization. Thousands of people here will thank and remember you forever. Long hours abuse. The letter went on to detail grueling hours, verbal and physical abuses as well as torture that inmates making the product had to endure, all in a place called Messenger Labor Camp in China. It was surprising at first and I didn't know if it was a hoax, recalled Case, a program manager at a company that runs a chain of thrift stores and donation centers. Once I read the letter and researched on the internet, I realized that this may be the real deal. I knew there are labor camps in China, but this slapped me in the face. I had no idea if this person was still alive or dead or in the camp. It's extraordinary that it was able to come all the way from China. China's first labor camps, one woman's fight for justice. Case heeded the writer's call by reaching out to human rights groups but received no response. She then posted the letter on Facebook, which prompted the local Oregonian newspaper to run a front-page article. As word of Kate's unusual Halloween discovery spread, her story turned into international news, throwing a spotlight on one of China's most notorious labor camps and the controversial system behind them. Strange discovery. Then one morning recently, some 6,000 miles away from Damascus, a bespectacled middle-aged Chinese man walked into the CNN office in Beijing to talk to us about his strange discovery half a world away. His voice was soft and calm, but from time to time it would betray a hint of both agony and force. I saw the packaging and figured the products were bound for some English-speaking countries, he said. I knew about Christmas, but we were making schools and the like. I really didn't know much about Halloween. But I had this idea of telling the outside world what was happening there. It was a revelation even to someone like me who had spent my entire life in China. After months of searching, through a trusted source and with some good luck, CNN found the man who says he wrote the letter that Case found in her Halloween decorations. Released from the labor camp but afraid to be sent back, he agreed to his first television interview on the condition that CNN concealed his identity. Mr. Zong, as he would be called, is a follower of the Falun Gong spiritual movement, branded by the Chinese government as an evil cult and outlawed since 1999. In claims he was detained by police several months before the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing and sentenced to 2.5 years in the Massachusetts labor camp in northeastern China. For people who have never been there, it's impossible to imagine, he said. The first thing they do is to take your human dignity away and humiliate you. Zhang recounted the systematic use of beating, sleep deprivation, and torture, especially targeting those like him who refuse to repent. Some gruesome details are too specific to him to be reported. Making products turned out to be an escape from the horrible violence, he said. We thought we could protect ourselves and avoid verbal and physical assaults as long as we worked and did the job well. Secret messages. Moving forward with his plan to expose the horror in the camp, he secretly tore off pages from exercise books meant for political indoctrination sessions as inmates were barred from having paper. He also befriended a minor criminal from his hometown, a monitor for the guard, who managed to get him another banned item, a ball pen refill. I hid in a hollow space in the bedstand and only got time to write leads at night when everyone else had fallen asleep, he recalled. The lights were always on in the camp and there was a man on duty in every room to keep an eye on us. Demonstrating his awkward position in bed, he continued. I lay on my side with my face toward the wall so he could only see my back. I placed the paper on my pillow and wrote on it slowly. A college graduate, he said it took him 2 or 3 days to finish a single letter through this risky and painstaking process. I tried to fill as much space as possible on each sheet, he said. Every letter was slightly different because I have to improvise. I remember writing SOS in some but not in others. Writing English was very hard for me. I had studied the language but had never practiced speaking or writing much. That's why I included some Chinese words to make sure that the message would not be misunderstood because of my English mistakes. He slipped 20 letters into Halloween decoration packaging in 2008 and at least one, against all odds, go out and made headlines for 4 years later. Inside the camp, in late October, the autumn colors were fading fast in Messenger Township as temperatures plunged to barely above freezing overnight. Driving towards town, the landscape was a mixture of bare farmland and mothballed factories with banners advertising cheap rent. The town itself sits outside Shenyang, the provincial capital of Liaoning and an industrial base of 8 million residents. If not for the labor camp in Fami, it would be just another backwater in China's northeastern Rust Belt. A national emblem and two signs adorned an unguarded entrance in the center of town. One displayed Liaoning Province Messenger labor, with the final words of camp missing. The other read Liaoning Province Ideological Education School inside the complex, which seemed to be closed. Though officials would not confirm this, fields covered with haystacks and dried corn separated three clusters of low-rise buildings. Administrative offices were painted white, females inmates' quarters mostly red, and males largely beige. High blue concrete walls or green fences glinted with barbed wire surrounding the inmate areas. A guard tower loomed above each corner. Wow, they've removed the sign in front of the men's camp, marveled Liu Hua, pointing at an unmarked gate. Look, that warehouse-looking building over there was where men like Zhang used to work. As the van carrying her and the CNN crew stopped near the women's quarters, powerful memories rushed back to this 50-year-old farmer from a nearby village. I was confined in that building, room 209, she said, while standing outside the fence. We had the 4:15 a.m. wake-up call, worked from 6 a.m. to noon, got a 30-minute lunch and bathroom break, and resumed working until 5:30 p.m. Sometimes we have to stay up until midnight if there was too much work, and if you couldn't finish your work, you would be punished. Last inmate, Liu only dared to return here after hearing the authorities had released the last group of inmates in mid-September, an apparent step towards shutting the facility down. She had landed in Messenger ties for petitioning against local officials over what she calls illegal land grabs. In total, she spent 2.5 years in the labor camps. Her first stints overlapped with Zhang's, but the two only made after both were released. Unlike Zhang, Liu didn't see work as an escape. Remembering making down jackets bound for Italy and shirts sold to South Korea, she still shivers at the heavy workload that almost ruined her health. I had to do everything from matching fabrics to sorting materials and cutting loose threads, she said. Every day I had to repeat 7 work steps for about 2,400 steps in total. Suffering from high blood pressure and malnutrition, Liu said she once fainted on the job but was denied medical care. For her, defiant attitude. She says guards also ordered fellow inmates to beat her twice. Their assault with plastic stools and basins so vicious that she lost consciousness. But I still had to work after I regained consciousness, she said. She added, "This place was hell on earth." Horror exposed. Last April, Messenger's fear-striking reputation was cemented when Lens, a Chinese magazine, published a lengthy article about the horrors inside its walls. Based on interviews with a dozen former female inmates, including Liu, the story, titled "Living Messenger," detailed appalling working and living environments as well as frequent use of torture in the camp. The Chinese journalist also spoke to two former officials at the camp who said Messenger housed more than 5,000 inmates as free laborers at its peak and created a new revenues of nearly 100 million yuan, $16 million, including those generated from exports. Although the officials acknowledged poor living and labor conditions, they denied the use of torture. They admitted some officers may have used excessive force in dealing with disobedient inmates. The story mentioned the discovery of an accusatory letter about Messenger in a Halloween decoration package in the United States, and that the news caused a big stir in the labor camp. When asked, one official confirmed the letter indeed came from the Messenger men's camp. The article's publication surprised many observers, as domestic Chinese media, all state-run, had long shunned the sensitive subject. Less than 2 weeks after the issue hit newsstands, the official state news agency Xinhua ran a response from the local authorities, calling the article seriously inaccurate. Provincial officials in Liaoning said their thorough investigation at Messenger turned up no evidence of any torture or mistreatment of the interviewed inmates during their confinement. Officials also rejected accusations of horrid living and working conditions in the camp, blaming the journalists for buying into smear campaigns launched by overseas Falun Gong movement. They did not address the Halloween letter in their rebuttal. Lens magazine suspended publication for several months after its Messenger issue. Despite CNN's repeated efforts, officials with Liaoning's police department and press office declined to comment for this story. Hundreds of camps. By all accounts, Messenger is but one of hundreds of labor camps in China burned under the Loja, or Re-Education Through Labor scheme. Read City-based and Re-Education Through Labor camps. Set up in 1957, the system allows the police to detain petty offenders such as thieves, prostitutes, and drug addicts in labor camps for up to 4 years without a trial. China's judicial process itself is already controlled by the ruling communists in a one-party regime. In a 2009 report to a United Nations Human Rights Forum, the Chinese government acknowledged 320 such facilities nationwide, holding 190,000 people. Other estimates have put the number of inmates much higher. Critics have long accused the authorities of misusing the camps to silence so-called troublemakers, including political dissidents, rights activists, and Falun Gong members. The continued existence of Longzhou signifies China remains a police state, said Pu Jinxiang, a prominent Beijing-based lawyer known for defending government critics in court and a vocal opponent of the labor camp system. It's against China's own constitution and laws, as well as international conventions it has signed. The danger is really about understanding police power at a time when they are under increasing pressure to maintain social stability. Two opposed cases last year generated a massive backlash against Longzhou, forcing the government to re-examine the thorny issue. In one case, a mother was sentenced to 1.5 years in a labor camp for disrupting social order after she repeatedly petitions officials to excuse men convicted of raping her 11-year-old daughter. In another case, a young village official was sent to a labor camp for 2 years of red waiting post-deemed statues. Signs of change. Since the change of top leadership a year ago and despite mixed signals, the government may finally be ready to scrap the controversial system. Li Keqiang, the new premier, said in his first press conference as head of the government that officials were working intensively to formulate a plan to reform the Longzhou system, and it may be announced before the year's end. A senior Chinese diplomat repeated this statement recently who addressing a UN-organized human rights forum. While some activities have expressed concerns of the official term of reform, instead of abolition, Pu, the lawyer, feels the strong tide of public opinions against the Longzhou system has forced the government's hand. Already, provinces around China, including Liaoning, seem to be preparing of the inevitable. State media has cited examples of officials stopping accepting new inmates, changing camp names to drug rehabilitation centers, and reducing staff on site. And an empty messenger seems to be the ultimate testimony there is no going back. Back in Oregon, Julie Katz is still awaiting the next move from her government. She contacted U.S. Customs officials after finding the latter, as federal law prohibits the import of goods made by forced labor. She said officials admitted there was little they could do other than adding her report to their file. She hasn't heard from them since. Contacted by CNN, a spokeswoman with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) declined to confirm the existence or status of an investigation. These allegations are very serious and are an investigative priority for ICE, she said. These activities not only negatively impact the competitiveness of American business, but puts vulnerable workers at risk.